I hope by the end of tonight at least people know a little bit more about what Lisbon is and the impact that it's going to have on people, because it will have the profoundest of impact upon people right across the European Union area. First thing to say, I suppose, is it's quite lamentable how little the political establishment in the 6 counties have made of the implications of Lisbon. I suppose a way of looking at it is as if Lisbon wasn't going to happen in 2 days' time. Certainly there wasn't going to be a vote on Lisbon in 2 days' time. The political establishment, generally speaking, here is being grossly negligent in their refusal to make this denial of democracy an issue, and it is the most severe denial of democracy, really. We've certainly, in our campaign literature and at every hands turn, made the point that the people of the 6 counties, the 1.8 million people, are being denied their right to a democratic say, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. The fact that the border still exists and people living maybe 100 yards apart from one another can be afforded the right or denied the right based upon the fact of the existence of the border. As one point, and certainly Lisbon is far more than just about the border and Ireland. It's of the profoundest consequences for people right across a range of issues and so on. Well, what is the Lisbon Treaty? What's it all about? And what does it have to say about the future of the European Union? And very importantly, what does it have to say about working people and the impact on their lives? How will the European Union post the Lisbon Treaty impact upon them? Well, it touches upon many things, and throughout the course of the night you will hear most of them, I would think, most of the negative issues. But the first one is that issue, that idea of democracy, not just in terms of the 6 counties, but in terms of Europe. And I want to address that first of all. And I'd like to start off by quoting a quote here. And I want you just to think about it briefly. Think about what type of attitude it's reflective of. And having heard it, if you did have a vote, would you even need to listen to anything else about Lisbon to have enough information to convince you to vote no? Public opinion will be led to adopt, without knowing it, the proposals that we dare not present to them directly. All the earlier proposals will be in the new text, but will be hidden and disguised in some way. Those words were from a man called Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who was the head of the Commission on the Constitution for Europe. The Convention, I should say. These words epitomise perfectly the arrogance which what we term a Euroclass of bureaucrats and politicians. This arrogance with which they approach, obfuscate and finally dismiss the whole principle of democracy, such as it applies to the European Union construct and its workings. And it's very important to understand this wasn't a gaffe, or this wasn't some quote that shouldn't have been quoted and off the record. So Valéry Giscard d'Estaing is getting on in years, but it wasn't reflective of that either. I mean, the people at the centre of the European Union project have been very open about the fact that this is a denial of democracy. Yeah? That the people shouldn't have a right to vote. The people should be hoodwinked into a future post-Lisbon. Again, we'll go into the details later, but the whole idea of this denial of democracy is crucially important. If you don't believe me, a few more quotes from some of the central Eurocrats, if you want to call them that. This from Giuliano D'Amato, who was the Vice President of the Convention on Europe. The good thing about not calling it a constitution is that no one can ask for a referendum on it. Again, before the fact of even presenting proposals to people or national parliaments, playing games about what is the least we need to do in terms of consulting with people and allowing them to exercise their vote. Jean-Claude Juncker, Prime Minister of Luxembourg. Of course there are transfers of sovereignty, but would it be intelligent to draw the attention of public opinion to this fact? Again, central players in the European Union project. Again, this attitude very clearly reflective of an attitude Vincent Brown wrote about recently. He said that the modus operandi of the European Union was characterised by one thing, and that was scorn for everyone. Even for the Euro fans themselves, as he classed it. He further went on to write that these Euro fans are so besotted that they don't care, but he implored all of us to care. All of those people who didn't have a vested interest in European Union workings and militarisation and neoliberal politics and so on. And it's very important, that's why primarily we're here, although you don't have a right to vote that you meditate somewhat on why you probably don't have a right to vote, but also to understand about the direction Europe is going in. If we can communicate that much, I think we will have done well tonight, definitely. In early June, 3 days away from now, the people of 26 counties will pass judgment on the so-called Reform Treaty. Again, the fact that 1.8 million people on this island are denied the right to vote, and very importantly, this is a treaty that will reflect upon and impact upon all of the people of Europe. 500 million people almost make up the population of the European Union now. All of those people are denied a right to vote based upon the political machinations of people who decide not to call it a constitution, decide not to put it back to the French and Dutch people who have already roundly rejected the exact same proposals. It is the same document. 2005, it was put to the French people, it was put to the Dutch people, and they rejected it out of hand on the basis of the impact it would have on social services and so on. They rejected it out of hand. They went back to the drawing board and said, what do we need to do? We'll remove the word constitution, we'll do this, and as we'll see, the only people we need to put it to are the paddies, so we can ram that down their throat. It is the same constitution again, don't believe me. Dermot Ahern, 26 county minister, ex-minister for foreign affairs. The substance of what was agreed in 2004 has been retained. What has gone is the term constitution. Again, they're very confident of victory. They were until very recently of victory in the 26 counties. Again, given their contempt for democracy, such as it exists when it is exercised by people who have the gall to tell them no. Nice 2 is a prime example of that. The Nice referendum was rejected and it was sent back. Have some more of it. Vote until you vote the way we would like you to vote. Very important that that approach still exists. 11th of March, Tuesday the 11th of March just gone, Bertie Ahern outgoing Taoiseach was challenged as to whether or not there would be a rerun of Nice 2, i.e. whether it would be put back to people to vote in the right way, and he refused to rule it out. In the European Parliament, this great example of democracy at work. Wednesday, 20th of February, there was a motion put to the European Parliament, and the wording of that motion was that the European Parliament undertakes to respect the outcome of the referendum in Ireland. That was defeated by 499 votes to 129. There's your great democratic system at work in Europe. Yeah. Paddies can have their vote. You don't vote the way we like it. Are we going to respect it? Well, there's a landslide against that motion. Very important incidentally to note that Prunchius de Rossa, great socialist and democrat of long standing, also voted against that motion. We serve neither Labour nor Ireland, but Europe might be an appropriate masthead to go over Labour Party headquarters, potentially. Certainly a long way away from James Connolly. So, what effect you have, again, some people will actually get into the nuts and bolts of the treaty, but certainly what you have here is an attempt to create a super state over the heads of people. Jose Manuel Barroso, the president of the EU Commission, like in the European Union, to the development of an empire. And again, this man has said that publicly, unashamedly. He hasn't said, well, hold on a minute, what it meant was not an empire as such. No, an empire. That's what it is, a super state. What does this super state consist of? What will it consist of? Well, post-ratification by national parliaments, we will all become, for the first time, citizens of Europe. We will have dual citizenship legally, which is a good or bad thing. Again, I'm certainly, and our party certainly isn't anti-European. What else will it have? It will have an unelected president. It will have a minister for foreign affairs. It will have a diplomatic corps. It will have embassies. It will have a Supreme Court that will override the national Supreme Courts, and has already done that. Hopefully some people will bring up the Laval case, which is very, very, very critical to the whole direction of Europe, workers' rights in particular, and how the European Court rules when it comes down to the rights of workers versus the interests of capital. Manuel Barroso again. Referendums make the process of approval of European treaties much more complicated and less predictable. If a referendum had to be held on the creation of the European Community or the introduction of the Euro, do you think these would have passed? You can see this idea, this super state, United States of Europe, and this might sound like science fiction to people, but there's no doubt about it, that's the direction that we are moving in. And post-Lisbon, we are as near to it as you can possibly hope to be. But it's very important to understand that. So much for democracy, so much for the idea that the inhabitants of a political system have the right to vote. Again, we in the 26 counties are lucky, but it's important to explain why we're lucky. A man called Raymond Crotty 20 years ago had to go all the way to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the 26 counties, to fight for the right to have a voice on any changes that affected him. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown got over very neatly. Yeah, their general election commitment was to a referendum. Unfortunately, again, this part of Ireland remains occupied, remains part of the United Kingdom, so-called. More craftsmanship, it's no longer a constitution, no need for a referendum. There you go, like that one. 1.8 million people, never mind the 55 million people who live across the water, are denied outright. So much for this idea of democracy again. This is the primary reason that éirígí is against wholeheartedly the Lisbon Treaty. Okay, I have to pass on. I will come back to some points later if I get a chance. Come on.